Emotional damage control. What is it that we need to do when we know something bad's going to happen or we already see something bad happening and we need to take damage control so that we don't relapse, go back out and drink, or struggle with our emotions like so many of us do? Today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what you can do to help your emotional well being and different things that we've done over the past 6 years of being sober and what we've learned in terms of, how do you manage that? How do you deal with emotional stuff? How do you deal with something that you're not preparing for? How do you deal with something like a big pandemic and deal with your sobriety? Because we know right now a lot of people are drinking and a lot of people are struggling because they don't have those plans in place. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about emotional damage control. And a lot of you guys remember last week I was having a very, very rough week. You guys caught me on a pretty rough day last week. And so what we want to do is we want to take a look at the different things that I did and different things that Terry does and different things that you guys in the audience do when it comes to these difficult situations. Now for me, I noticed that perspective is big, because sometimes we look at things and we look at what our life is like and we have something bad happen and we get really emotional about it. Whether it's someone cutting us off in traffic, losing a job, a loved one arguing with us, getting in a fight with some family member, or whatever it is, we look at that and we tend to be in the situation and in the moment without looking at things long term and looking at how things are going to play out. Because even the worst things that have happened in history have usually come and gone. And so we got to look at that as just a part of our life and look at what are we going to do next. And what I notice most people do is they spend 90% of the time dwelling on or worrying about the problem rather than actually going for the solution. And last week when I was in my little fit of emotional downtroddenness, I found that it was very difficult to break out of it. Now, I did find that after being sober, it lasted a heck of a lot less time than it usually did. Usually if something like that would happen, I would be out for weeks, months, I'd be in a depression, I'd be going crazy, and I wouldn't know what to do with myself. But now I've developed some tools and systems and safeguards to watch myself emotionally and say, what am I going to do about this? And now I look at it and I say, okay, I'm going to allow myself this little time to grieve or be angry or wallow or whatever it is, but then, I'm going to focus on the solution and focus on what I'm going to do. And I think it's very important that we open up this dialogue. Looks like there's a lot of people in the chat today, so good morning to everyone. Hopefully everyone's staying sober, or if this is your first day, or you're deciding whether you want to quit drinking, welcome. You're in the right place. So, Terry, what are your thoughts on dealing with emotions, focusing on what's going on, and, really looking at how to have this emotional damage control?
Well, I definitely have some tools that I use. And before I start, good morning, everybody. Great to see you all. I see that Ty has a year and 72 days. That's awesome. Hey, the rest of you, let us know how much sobriety you got. It's something to be proud of, even if it's one day, because I certainly couldn't put together one day when I was drinking. So let us know how much you got so that we can celebrate that. Good to see you all here. For me, emotional sobriety, it's huge. There's a lot of things that I have to do, and one thing, if something like happens, like right away, I get bad news or something big, somebody yells at me or whatever. The first thing I really need to do is I need to step back and pause instead of just react to the situation. Because generally, when I react, like let's say somebody starts yelling at me, I'm going to start yelling back. I'm going to say all sorts of stuff I don't want to say, and that is not going to be helpful to the situation at all. Or if something sad happens and I just react right away, I'm going to do something that I don't want to do, and that could include taking a drink to push those emotions down. So I like to pause, step away if I can, and think about the situation. And like Marcus was just saying, the emotions they're not a bad thing to have. When I was drinking, I drank to push them away. And all that did was it didn't push the emotions away, it pushed them down the road for me to feel them even more. If it was an anxious situation, the anxiety would come back worse. Sometimes a lot worse. And, if it was a sad situation, the same thing. I would the emotion wouldn't go away. I'd just push it down the road, and it would come back even worse. And it would come back, both of those things would come back worse because I didn't start thinking about a solution to the problem and start dealing with it. And that's what I have to do is I need to pause and then start to deal with the situation, whatever the emotion is, and start to take care of it in a productive way. Um, once I've gotten through that pause and dealing with the emotions, then I think about, we talk about the serenity prayer all the time, and it really is true as far as I think about what in that situation can I take care of. And if the situation is something where maybe I had something to do with it, what was my part in this situation? What did I do so that I understand that I need to not do whatever it was again, and just understand that maybe I was part of the cause of this problem. That may take away some of my anxiety or my fear or my anger, and allow me to do the things that I do have control over to alleviate the situation and get things going in the right direction. And those are really, they're fairly simple tools, but they're at the same time pretty complicated to deal with, because our natural reaction as humans is to just react. We have this fight or flight mentality, and somebody comes at us aggressively, we want to defend ourselves right away. And it's a difficult thing to step over, especially when alcohol is in the mix as well, because that just exemplifies those emotions. So those are some of the tools, and yeah, there you go.
Absolutely. And I found that some things that really help me is staying away from your stressor points. That's a big one, because oftentimes we feel like if the phone rings, we got to get it. If the email gets sent, we got to respond right away. And we really focus on this and we look at it. And what we have to do is we have to take damage control and look at what it is that's going to spike our emotions. So for me, I know checking my numbers, because I have another business and I check my numbers a lot on my phone. I remember one employee I had used to call me the F5 guy, because I'd sit there hitting F5 all day to refresh the page to see, what the earnings were. And he's like, dude, it's not going to change in like 2 seconds. And so I kind of got myself into a habit. And what I didn't realize was happening was every time I would check that and there'd be a new sale or there'd be a new commission or whatever, I would get a dopamine rush. And so I would train my brain to get the dopamine rush every time that happened. Or some of you guys are Instagram people, and you check your Instagram to see how many people like something or see how many people check something or viewed or whatever. And what happens is you're getting a little dopamine hit every time. Or let's say you're on Facebook and some guy says something about a political view that you don't agree with, and you type something out really thought out and really, focused on it. And we look at that and we're like, okay, well, is that giving me the dopamine hit? And can I stay away from it, right? Because a lot of times we can stay away from these outside stressors, and we can protect our sobriety and our emotional well-being by turning them off. Like last night, I noticed I was getting in the trap of checking things too often. And I went out. I was like, I'm going to go in the jacuzzi for the night. And usually I'll take the phone and sit in the jacuzzi and watch videos or watch the news or something. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to leave the phone inside. And I was like, okay, actually, I'm going to leave the phone off till I go to bed tonight. I'm sure the world of internet marketing or whatever it is I got going on isn't going to end or combust in the next 5 hours. And even if it does, there's not a whole lot I can do about it. And so we have to limit our stressors and really look at what we can and can't do, what we can and can't control. And a lot of people right now, they're addicted to the news, and they're like, okay, what do? I got to watch the news every day because that's what a responsible citizen does. Well, not a whole lot has changed. I mean, you can watch the press conferences. I think if you watch them, you're up to like 70 hours worth of whatever you want to call it. And I, the first couple I watched, I'm like, okay, let's see what's going on. And then I kind of tapered off, and I'm like, I'll get the headlines. I don't need to dwell on it this much. I don't need to be this immersed in it. And so I looked at it and I focused, and I'm like, okay, how can I limit the amount of dopamine that I'm getting by checking these things because they're getting a rush off of them. You're getting a rush checking these. You're focusing on these. You're watching these. And you got to limit it. And you got to say, what am I willing to do to protect my sanity? Because a lot of times, our world's not set up for that. Like, people weren't meant to go 80 miles an hour on the highway in a little tin box. That wasn't something, I don't think, the founders of the world was like, yeah, I think that's a good idea, right? And it produces stressors. And what happens is we're using these old brains from years ago. It's called the lizard brain, right? And we got to look at that. And we got to look at the lizard brain. And it's trained and hardwired for protection. It wants to protect you. And what happens is it's geared and hardwired to like run away from woolly mammoths in the, wherever you're at in the desert. I think there's woolly mammoths in the desert. I could be wrong though. That's not my area of expertise. But we were hardwired to run away from these real threats. And so what happens is our body produces chemicals so that we can do that. So you're going to get anxious, you're going to have struggles, and you're going to feel like you need to run, and you'll have this anxiety, and your body produces these chemicals, and they have nowhere to go because you're not running from them. You're sitting on the couch watching a news conference, and you get this same type of energy. And what we need to do is, one, we need to realize that that's happening, right? I used to, years ago, I would say, what's wrong with me? I'm anxious. What's wrong? There must be something wrong with me as a person. Must be a flaw in me as a person. I better go and get this fixed. Instead of looking at it and saying, well, this is the chemicals the body produces, and this is going to happen when certain things happen, right? It's like that thing people say when you get the phone call and your heart drops, right? A loved one dies, someone's hurt, something bad happens. You get that phone call and your heart drops, and it's metaphorical. Your heart's not actually dropping, right? But you get that sensation, and all of a sudden your complete physiology, your complete emotional state changes on a dime. And we got to protect from these things, and we got to look at it. We got to step back, and we have to say to ourselves, what is it we're going to do? What is it I'm going to do? Am I going to look at this objectively? Am I going to take a break? I get the phone call. I get the news. I get whatever it is. I put it down. I go outside and I meditate. Or I sit, or I relax, or for me, I like to have cigars. Some people, they like tea. Some people like to just sit there. Whatever it is you like to do, figure out a way to get out of it and say, I'm going to step away from this. I'm going to focus on what I need to do, and I'm going to focus on really, really getting there. We got someone being kind of rude in the comments. I'm going to leave him here because hopefully maybe he needs to hear this. I don't know. So just carry on, and you don't have to respond to everyone. And that's a lesson in emotional control. You don't owe anyone a response. You don't have, there's no rule that's written that says, I have to respond to every single person. And we got to realize, people come from all walks of life. People come from all types of places. They're dealing with their own shit. They got their own stuff going on. And we got to focus and say, what can I do to keep my emotional well-being? What can I do to stay serene? God grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't change. I can't change people. I can't change a lot of stuff, but I have to look at this and I have to say, what can I do to stay sane and focus on my results, focus on my sobriety? Because if we don't have our sobriety, we don't really have anything.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest tools that I learned when I got sober was not worrying about what other people think, not just keeping my side of the street clean. And this happens a lot in the 12-step rooms, where you get the people in there and they're sharing their stuff, and you're like, what the hell are you talking about? But you learn patience. And if I'm gonna let that stuff get to me, I ain't gonna stay sober, that's for sure. So I think that's what it's all about, is just tolerance. Try to love people, try to see where they're coming from, and yeah, it's kind of the way I go, and it seems to work so far. I'm happy. Mm-hmm. And even though we're all stuck in this isolation, it's all good. That's fine. With a lot of 12-step meetings are, well, pretty much all of them nowadays, the ones that are left, they're all on Zoom, and we get the Zoom bombers, and I don't understand why they do the Zoom bombing. It's I have no idea what they get out of it, but everybody, when it first happened, you could just see the faces of all the other participants, and they're all getting all negative and frowny, and oh my God, what is this guy saying? And nowadays it happens. So just delete them and not even worry about it. It just doesn't even phase us anymore. And it happens all the time. The securities get a little better, but yeah, it's all good. People have their own issues, and maybe they can work through it.
Yeah, and it reminds me of an old story from the Bible where I think I'm probably going to hack this story up because it's been a while. But it was an old story where there's like this church, and they have this church meeting, and everyone's dressed up, and they're all fancy and ready for church, much like how churches are today, right? You dress up, you get your suit, you go in there, and this like tattered homeless dude walks in with no shoes and half drunk or whatever. Just he's a mess. And everyone in the church turns to him and they give him the nose, like, oh, God, what are you doing here? I mean, don't you see that this is a well-respected establishment of biblical proportions or whatever? And they go in, and they're giving him the snub, and they're giving him the news. And I think it was Jesus, or there was a story or something like that. And he was like, hey, these are the kind of people that we want to come in here. These are the kind of people we want to talk to, because it's not the people who are well that need a doctor, it's the people who are sick that need a doctor. And what we need to realize is that in all walks of life, we want to be open within reason, right? Obviously, you be open within reason, you listen to someone's point of view, you understand what they're going through, but that doesn't mean you need to let them affect you, and that doesn't mean like, you need to invite them over for dinner or whatever. It just means that, hey, you know what, let's look at this from a different perspective, because one of the things that sobriety gave me is the real belief that no one is any better than anyone else. We're all just here trying to do our thing. We do the best of what we can. And I realized in my sobriety that life is made up of agreements. And we agree what things are. We agree that in church you wear the tie and the suit. We agree that in AA meetings it's conducted a certain way. And I remember years ago when I first went to AA right after I got sober, there was a men's only meeting, and it was the only one at the time, so I'm like, I guess I'll go to that one. And a lady who was obviously having trouble, with drugs and everything, came in, and, she's like, I know this is a men's meeting, can I come in? And I'm like, of course you can come in. If you need help with alcohol, you're in the right place. Men, women, aliens, doesn't matter. And a lot of people in that meeting were like, oh, what are you doing? You're breaking the rule here. And I'm like, she needs help. Let her sit here and get the help she needs. Let her get whatever she needs. And we got to really look at that, and we got to focus, and we got to say, what are we doing to protect ourselves emotionally? And one of the things about protecting ourselves emotionally is looking at the fact that everyone's all in this together. We're all the same. Everyone's got their own bag. Everyone's got their own stuff they're dealing with. When you get cut off on the road, that person might be taking their wife to the doctor because she's giving birth. I mean, we don't know, right? So you got to look at that. And what I look at is we're all the same. We're all going through this together. We're all dealing with this stuff. And we have to focus on what it is that's going to keep us okay. And what is that? Well, for one, I got to focus on being sober. If I don't focus on being sober, I'm going to be drunk. And if I'm drunk, I can't control my emotions at all. All bets are off, right? 1 drink, 10 drinks, a million drinks, it's going to affect my emotions. And we know that our bodies are chemical, emotions are chemical, and we got to focus on that and say, okay, what are we going to do to protect ourselves, right? What are we going to do? Meditate, read, go outside, enjoy the air, focus on gratitude. One of the things that I look at is focusing on gratitude. Oftentimes we focus on this and we're like, okay, well, I'm focusing on the bad. I'm focusing on the bad. This is what I can't have. This is what I don't have. This is what I want. This is what I desire. Instead of looking at, well, right now where I'm at, I'm okay. I can sit, out in my yard, I can be okay. I've lived in big houses, I've lived in little houses, I've lived in living rooms of mobile homes, and I've been okay. It wasn't ideal, it wasn't what I wanted, but in that moment, I'm okay. And in this moment, you can choose to be okay. You can choose to calm down, and also look at what your intake is. Does anyone notice a difference between the way my demeanor is on this call versus last week? Right, one of the things that I had forgotten was I forgot when I switched from regular caffeine coffee to decaf, it was good. And then I forgot about that and went back to caffeine coffee because they had some new kind on sale. And I'm like, oh, I want to try that. And so I tried it. And I noticed I was getting in a little emotional wreck. Right? And I noticed I had to check things more. I was a little bit more frantic. I was a little bit more all over the place. And the symptoms of caffeinated coffee mimicked the symptoms of anxiety. So I'm sitting there with heart palpitations and wondering what the hell's going on. And it's like, hey, dumbass, you just drank 4 cups of coffee. And you don't make it like other people. You make yours really strong, so it's probably like 10 cups. And we have to look at it and say, what is it that's chemically affecting me? Too much sugar, too much, caffeine, too much whatever it is, because those can affect your mood. And it's very difficult when your mood is altered by some kind of chemical, whether it's a lack of sleep, caffeine, alcohol. It's very difficult to be able to rise above that and be okay with it. Right? It's very difficult to say, this is what's happening, but we need to get in the habit of saying, this is what's happening.
Absolutely. You know, I drink caffeinated coffee. I've never stopped. I don't know if I ever will. Wow, I should try it sometime, but I'll probably get those headaches and all that and go through withdrawal. It's something I'm definitely addicted to. But it's all good for now.
Yeah, and it's to each his own. Like, I wake up naturally wired. Some people wake up tired and they need the coffee or want the coffee or whatever. It's not a judgment call on that because I smoke cigars and there's plenty more judgment about smoking cigars than coffee, right?
Oh, yeah.
But we got to look at that and we got to say, okay, what is it that's affecting what we're doing? You know, and you got to really, really focus on that.
Yeah. And, you know, when I first got sober, the doctors said, you know, you need to quit smoking, you need to quit drinking, you need to quit everything right now. And the people in the rooms, they were telling me, no, worry about quitting drinking. That's what's going to kill you right now. And that's what I had to do. Yeah. And that's what I focused on. And work on the other things later. That's what I did. And, you know, that's a key thing in sobriety is now that I'm sober, I can actually focus on the things I need to do and work on that as long as I keep sobriety in the first thing that I focus on. Sobriety has to be the most important thing. And I see Veronica just said gratitude, yeah, and Marcus just said it too. That's a huge thing is gratitude. Another thing that helps a lot in emotional sobriety, and I hear this all the time from people that have lasting sobriety, is helping other people. That's a huge thing, you know, not going out there and looking for recognition and helping other people, and it doesn't have to be going to the AA rooms and taking a commitment. It can be anything, helping somebody, just being a person that's of service. You know, one of the things I do, well, not right now because we can't travel anywhere, but you know, I go up and up to Seattle and hang out with my parents. And do what I can. Well, just my dad now, but you know, and I help my brother out because my brother lives there. He takes care of my dad a lot, so I give him that week of vacation from having to do that, and you know, just be of service. Or I cycle a lot, and one of the things I did last year is I coached a beginning cycling team, and that was great. It gets me out of myself, gets me thinking about what does this other person need. So I'm not focusing on that little issue that just happened. You know, yesterday, I'm on the bike and I'm like, what can I do to help this person? It's changing that mindset. That's what helps. Definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's very important. Menendez says, I'm reading Russell Brand's book, Recovery, Freedom from Our Addictions. Yeah, it's a pretty interesting book. I think I listened to the audio tape, which is a little difficult. His voice is a bit much to take.
Yeah.
But he's pretty good, you know. And wherever you find your truth, whatever speaks to you, that's what I would recommend going for. Personally, for me, I know whenever I get in an emotional wreck, you know, I like to listen to Alan Watts, Ram Dass, several other people. Anthony DeMello is a good one. You know, those talks usually put me at ease, and they remind me that what I'm going through right now isn't what I'm always going to go through.
Yeah.
What's happening now is, you know, it'll pass. You know, we got the pandemic stuff, we got economic crashes, we got all this stuff, but, you know, it'll work itself out. Might not be ideal. You know, some people might lose some stuff, and that's not always good, but we try to do what we can. We try to help people, and we try to focus as much as you can, and you try to realize that, you know, if I have my breath, if I can breathe, if I'm okay, and as long as I don't drink, I can make it through a lot more than I thought. And throughout sobriety, you'll learn this because, you know, we find ourselves like, wow, yeah, I would have drank over that 3 years ago or 5 years ago or whatever it is. And we really, really focus and look at it. Lori says she likes to buy cards for food or gift cards for people. That's good, yeah.
That's great.
Definitely a good thing to do. Or reach out to people who need help in sobriety. Again, one of the things we need to do, and I know that it's cliche and it's kind of weird, is we need to take care of ourselves first. It's like being in an airplane, right? When you go on an airplane, if you remember what that was like back in the day when we used to fly on airplanes, when they do the announcements, they always tell you if you're traveling with children, put the mask on yourself first, if the masks drop, and then put it on your children. And the reason they tell you this is because they know that if you're a mother of 3, your kids are going to be, you know, swinging around and jumping around, and it's going to be a pain in the ass to put the mask on all of them. By the time you get the first mask on the first kid, you're probably going to be out of breath anyway, and you can't help anyone. And so they tell you this because by giving yourself oxygen first and making sure you're okay, then you can help others. And sobriety is the same way. We need to put our mask of sobriety, our protection emotionally on first, then help others. And that's not to say, you know, help everyone. Like if you're trying to help someone in the seat next to you and they keep kicking you in the eye on purpose and ripping the mask off on purpose, you know, how long are you going to help them? I'll be like, hey, mask is there when you need it. I'll be over here. I'm not going to get kicked in the eye anymore. You know, so you sit there and you do your thing. And it all comes down to keeping your stuff in order. Can I keep my stuff in order? Can I take care of me? Can I focus on what I need so that I can help others? And sometimes that seems selfish. Oftentimes, I know when Terry and I first started this channel, you get people that come out all over the place that write you and say, hey, you know what? I need this help. And what you find is that with alcoholics and addicts and recovering people, everything's always an emergency. Everything. Like the front door won't lock, it's an emergency. You need to come over and fix it right now. And you can learn throughout time. There are things that are emergencies, you know, someone detoxing, someone dealing with drug stuff, someone dealing with this. You know, we look at that and we say, okay, that might be an emergency, or probably is. But, you know, some of the things aren't. Some of the things aren't. And by us helping others through that and helping others through their emotional stuff, it's going to help them and help us because now we're like, okay, look, last 5 things you called me about, you made it through. You know, like panic attacks. People have panic attacks. They think, you know, the world's ending. They think all this stuff's happening. But every time, you make it through. You make it through. You're okay. You're going to be okay. Obviously, if there's something big, go to the doctor, clearly. But for the most part, 90% of the problems that we have originate in our mind and stay in our mind and never really come true.
Yeah, absolutely. Adam says, I don't want to fight my neighbors. I'm outnumbered 1 to 8, so finally when I get peace because my police reports have been taken seriously for once. I think you're saying I need to get out of this place. And yeah, I saw your post a little bit earlier, and that's a bummer, yeah. And that's part of taking care of your side of the street. You're dealing with what you need to deal with, and you're keeping, you know, you're taking care of what you need to take care of as far as filing the police report and getting the things done you need to do, and just trying to get out. It's a difficult thing to just move, especially in a situation like this in isolation. I doubt it's yeah, I don't know what your deal is where you are, but that'd be a very difficult thing to do. Megan says, I think it's sad how people are promoting day drinking in quarantine so much. No one is immune to alcoholism. If you drink at 10 in the morning, you're on your way there and they don't see that. Well, I don't know that everybody's on their way if they start drinking at 10 a.m. But yeah, it could be a sign. And I have noticed that, you know, on the Facebook groups that I'm in and all that, you know, people talk about. There's always the funny meme about day drinking and all that. And that was definitely one of my things. Is I drank all day and all night. Wake up in the morning and cure the hangover with the drink, and go on from there. Um, so yeah, it's I don't know. I think the majority of the people are probably okay, and they're drinking more. Definitely, alcohol sales have gone up by what 40, 50% in this country at least, and probably everywhere else. But you know, I have to take care of me once again, and I haven't raised my alcohol consumption. I don't drink anything. That's all good. I just try to stay home and follow what they recommend to do, and it works.
Absolutely. Lori has an interesting one I want to take. She says, my family phone calls trigger me in an emotionally damaging way. They definitely make me want to drink. One of the things I did, because that was a huge trigger for me back when I was drinking, when I got out of rehab, I actually, my wife blocked all the family calls for, I think it was a month or 2 months, just because it was like, hey, you know what, I got to take care of me. And we didn't tell anyone when I went in rehab. You know, I think I told my brother, and I had asked him not to tell anyone. And I was like, this is what I'm doing. I need to focus on me, and I don't need outside input. Like that's not helping. And it's not bad to say that. It's not bad to do that. Sometimes you just need to take care of yourself, and you know, sometimes you need to look at it and say, well, these family phone calls are causing me to want to drink. I need to X these out for a while. You know, and what'll happen is you'll get away from them for a while, and when you go back, you'll probably have a new perspective on them. You'll say, hey, this isn't as big as I thought it was. You know, and it'll completely change.
Yeah, and it's hard when you first get sober because I know when I first got sober, I didn't know what would trigger me. I didn't know what wouldn't trigger me. I didn't have many tools on how to stay sober, and I didn't know about gratitude or helping other people or any of that stuff. And so people could say anything, and I'd believe it or I'd completely shun it, and I just didn't know what to do. So for me, it was the simplest thing to do was just to kind of take things easy, take things slow, listen to what everybody says, but at the same time, have another sober alcoholic that has got some good solid sobriety in my life that I can talk to, because they've been through this, they've seen other people go through it, and they knew what direction to steer me and what worked for them and what didn't work for them. And that was huge for my sobriety, is just listening to those guys, and that got me going in the right direction. And then I started to slowly develop those tools I needed. So yeah, the family phone calls. I'm lucky. My family is recovered, so they've been through it. So I didn't get those phone calls of what, oh, how, why did you drink? Why didn't you just quit? Why did you have to go to rehab? You know, they all knew.
Oh, I got those calls. Those were fun. Why don't you just put it down? Like, oh, okay, yeah. David says, basically, alcohol blocks out emotional pain and shags up your mental and physical health in the long run. That's why I stopped. I got scared of what binge drinking was doing to me. Yes, very, very scary. Derek says, I had work things that would irritate me, and eventually I would just walk away from them and go back with a clearer head. Excellent solution. You know, take a break. When things get heated, take a walk. No one says you have to sit there. I know it's difficult when you sit there at Thanksgiving and everyone's arguing about politics and you feel like you need to be in it and defend yourself. But you have to really ask yourself, what does it matter to me if Uncle Tim disagrees with me? What's it really matter? His vote's just as important as mine. Like, That's the fact. Everyone's entitled to their own vote. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. And so we got to look at that and we got to focus and say, hey, you know what? What does it really matter? When you're on the Zoom meetings and they get the bomb, what does it really matter if this guy comes in and disrupts the meeting? What does it really matter? Does it really? Do I really care what this person miles away thinks, or maybe right in your backyard? Who knows, right? Do I really care? And that's not to say like be mean or be rude to people. That's just to say protect yourself. Focus on what you're going to do. It's not wrong for someone to get in an argument about politics and say, you know what? I'm okay. I don't need to talk. And they'll probably say, oh, well, that's because you're wrong. Yeah, maybe it is. I don't know. I don't know everything in the universe, so I could be wrong. I don't know. See you later. And it comes down to the thing of, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? Would you rather be right or would you rather be content? I used to want to be right and drunk. You can argue with me. And then I got sober and I figured out I was wrong anyway. It's like, what the hell? That's a cruel trick, right? And it doesn't even matter. And now I could still be wrong because we don't know. We don't know everything. But we can focus on what we can focus on, and we can live in peace of mind and serenity in saying, I don't need to overreact over these situations anymore. I don't need to.
Right. Robocop says, I can't take a sip due to the fact I know if I mess with my sobriety date up again, I'll sink. I tried to drink like a gentleman numerous times. It's impossible. And yeah, that's definitely the case for me too. And I've tried the exact same thing. I'm just going to drink. I'm not going to drink until 5 p.m. and then I'm just going to have 4. That's all I'm going to have. And yeah, that didn't work by usually 8 a.m. And then by 10 a.m. I'd had 5. So,
Yeah.
but that's so common. I have a good friend that he just decided that he's going to start drinking again, and he said it's okay. I wasn't that bad, and he had, I don't know, he's sober for 8 years, and he said I'm going to keep it under control and this and that, and hey, that's great for him. If he can do that, that's great. But everything I see that he's saying nowadays is just justification for what he's doing. And like I said, it's his sobriety, and that's, if he can handle it, he can. I know if I just suddenly changed my mind and decided that I could start to drink slowly, I might be able to keep it up for a couple of months. I might be able to keep it up for a year, but it's going to kick in. And what happened to me when I had a little bit of sobriety and started drinking, I was full blown right away. But maybe I could. I don't know. But I'm having a great time in sobriety. It's okay. I think he wanted to hang out with his drinking friends more, or I'm not sure what it is. But me, I'm able to hang out with drinking friends now. I just don't go meet them at the bar where they're doing shots. But it's okay if we go out to dinner and they have wine or they have a cocktail or whatever. It's not a big deal for me. Sobriety is just awesome for me because I can do whatever I want any time of the day. That's huge. That's freedom. He felt he wasn't free because he didn't have the freedom to drink. I feel I'm free not drinking. When I was drinking, I was not free at all. Alcohol, I was a slave to it.
Absolutely. And it's important to look at, because a lot of people look at it like, oh, you're taking away my freedom to drink. Do you really have freedom? Can you stop? Then you don't have freedom. Like, you're an automatic robot to drinking. The freedom is being able to stop. The freedom is being able to say no. And it's very important, Derek says, Terry, total truth. Might be able to prolong it for a bit, but usually you end up back where you were.
Yeah. Pretty Nick has a good one, I think. I didn't read the whole thing. Anyways, the one thing I struggle with is wanting to be a part of the party, so to speak. I feel left out. I miss being with the boys, but I know I can't just have 2 beers. It's for the better. And that's one thing I did when I first got sober. And I'm not sure how much sobriety you got there, but when I first got sober, I did not go to any events where there was alcohol. I stayed away from all of it because I didn't know what would trigger me. And that's what was suggested to me, is stay away from that stuff. And then slowly I was able to start to go to things where maybe drinking was happening, a party or something like that. And that's what I did. But I made myself accountable. So like the party's going to start at 7. All right. I show up at 7. I don't show up late. I show up at 7. I talk to another sober alcoholic that may not be going to that party and let them know that I'm going to do this thing. Here's one little piece of accountability. And he's like, call me anytime if you're having any issues, if you're starting to get a craving. There's a second piece of accountability for me. And so I kept aware of that. And then I went to go to the party. And then, you can tell, especially when you're sober, you can tell when people are drinking and they're drinking and drinking. And there's this little, it maybe not be a line that they cross, but you can tell when their people are starting to get hammered. And that's when I just politely say, all right, and go to the host. Don't go to everybody in the party and say, all right, I'm leaving now. I go to the host and maybe a couple of other key people and say, all right, I got to take off. And then I leave. And then that's what I did in that first sobriety. And that was a great way to figure out what I could handle and what I didn't want to handle. I've been to parties where I was like, I shouldn't have done that. That was risky, and you kind of learn. You kind of learn by going. Same thing with going to restaurants or well, I don't go to bars unless I actually have a reason to go there, and the reason is not to go hang out with people drinking. So a legitimate reason for going there. But yeah, I hear you. It's difficult to figure out what you can and can't do in that early sobriety, and then even after a few years, I still have to analyze it and try to figure out what's going to work, and figure out if I should just stay home or do something else.
Absolutely. Megan says, that's why this can be good time to focus on sobriety, because we don't have to worry about going out with friends to social events. Absolutely. That's definitely a plus side.
Let's see. I was reading this one on masks. Does it have to do with alcohol? The masks are useless, but they may save lives, LOL. So wear a mask. We all have had a mask. Now these masks represent no freedom of speech. I'm in New Zealand, Terry. Thanks for replying. Right on. Well, I wear the mask when I go out, and
And you can still speak.
Yeah, yeah, you can still speak. I don't think it's infringing on freedom of speech. And I walk my dog. I don't wear a mask when I do that, unless somebody's walking by me real close. But I walk at 7 in the morning, so not many people are out. Since nobody's working, everybody sleeps in.
Yeah, and that's another thing to watch out for too. Is how our brains work. Right now, there are no shortage of conspiracy theories about what's going on.
Oh,
and it's pretty ridiculous. I mean, some of them, I don't know if they're true or not. I don't work for any government or anything like that. But we have to take everything with a grain of salt, because remember, Y2K was going to shut all our computers off. There's all kinds of things always happening, and we got to just take it in stride and focus on our sobriety, and not focus on all the stuff. The other night, I got kind of emotionally involved. I saw a post from someone who posted that this prophet guy had predicted some political thing. And she's like, oh, see, this is true. And it just so happened to be the prophet guy I had a run-in back when I was like 11 years old. So it was like extra like annoying to me, because I'm like, I know that guy's a fraud, because he like was a big sweaty mess and yanked me out of the audience and spit all over me because he was yelling the words of God. And apparently I was supposed to be a scientist, but I'm not, right? And, we got to take these with a grain of salt, and we got to look at it, because these things are meant to get attention. That's what it's about. The news, you watch the news, I don't care if you watch it, everything is breaking news. Breaking news, guy on the street farted. It's like, that's not breaking news. That's just lame. You're just using breaking news to get people to watch it because they see the thing, and that's what we're trained to look at. So we got to really protect ourselves about what media we're watching, because there's like Amish cultures out there that don't watch TV, and they're getting along just fine. The conspiracy theorist isn't getting them, right? It's not getting them, and we got to look at that and say, hey, I can be okay if I choose to be okay. Could bad things happen? Sure, they could. Absolutely. We're not immune to that. Could some of the stuff have some truth to it? Absolutely. Am I going to spend my entire month home reading about all these? Hell no. Why? Because at the end of the day, what am I really going to figure out? And here's the key question. What can you really do about it? What can you really do about it? Not a whole lot.
Yep.
Grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't change. What can't I change? A hell of a lot. You think you're powerful? You can't change that much. You can change yourself. You can change your alcohol habits. I can't change a whole lot in the government. Can't change a whole lot with what's going on. Can't really focus on it. Like Adam says, Bill Gates wants this stuff. I see all kinds of stuff about Bill Gates, and actually, I don't know what I believe about it, but I do know that the talk they're referencing, that's not at all what he said. Not at all what he said. Like, not even close. Like, I watched the talk. They're like, hey, watch this talk. This is where he says it. That's not what he's saying. Not even close. So we got to take it with a grain of salt. And again, we don't know. You know, it's easy to put blame somewhere. I'm an alcoholic because of this. Parents were too mean. Got bullied. Whatever. I'm frustrated because of this. Or in society, we're going to blame the rich guy. We're going to blame this guy. We're going to blame that guy. Or we're going to blame the poor. Right? There's people who blame the poor because there's not enough money, when in actuality, if you look at the numbers, the amount of money that goes to the poor is not as big as the amount that goes to the rich. So you got to look at your things, and you got to take it in stride, and you got to say, what are we willing to do? What are we willing to do? Right? And here's the thing about your mind. When you look at something, it's called cognitive bias. When you look at something, your mind is going to be biased to see it. So if you hear a conspiracy theory about Bill Gates, every word you hear after that from that man, you're going to fit into your current view, your current bias. You're going to say, see that? Talked about Microsoft. Soft. Maybe he's going to put something in our soft drinks. Oh, he drinks Diet Coke. Oh my God, it's real. And you're going to go nuts, and you're going to go down the rabbit hole. But you have to ask yourself at the end of the day, what are we going to do? Right? What are we going to do? We can't really do much about it. So I'm going to focus on being serene and be okay. And I'm not going to spend hours. I used to spend hours. And when this thing first started, I did spend too much time, and I noticed it was affecting my emotional well-being, and that led up to the bad things that happened in my business and stuff. It wasn't the cause of them, but it led up to that. And then when those happened, my defenses were already down because I wasn't focusing on stuff. And if you go into these things with your defenses down, if Lori gets on the call, like let's say she has a bad day, and she's like, man, you know what? Everything sucks. This is one of those days where it's just good enough not to drink. And the phone rings, and it's drunk uncle or whoever it is that calls you. And you look at it, and you're like, I can answer it or I cannot. Okay? If you're already emotionally depleted and something else happens, you are not going to be okay. It's going to be very difficult. Very difficult. That's the thing that takes you out. That's what takes you out. So I'm going to focus my time on my sobriety in my life and whatever everyone's talking about on Facebook, because everyone is an expert, except me. I don't know much about nothing. I know a few things about the internet, and I know how to stay sober, and I like to cook. That's about it. Right? I don't know too much about other stuff. And I got to get honest with myself and say, you know what? I'm going to let the people who do that deal with that. I'm going to focus on what I'm doing. And that'll help you stay sober.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you had mentioned you don't know what caused you to become an alcoholic, and that's me too. In our program, I talk quite a bit about factors, things that may have contributed, but really, I became an alcoholic because I drank too much over a long period of time, and I became addicted to it. That's the only reason I can tell you why I became an alcoholic. There's lots of things that contributed, absolutely. I didn't have a lot of tools on how to deal with life. Maybe I was trying to push things down. Certain things happened in my life. Absolutely, those are contributing factors. But I see you mentioned sometimes music is a trigger for you, so don't just listen, then change your habit. And you can change your habit instead. Listening to music, go to the gym or work out in your home. If you want to change your habit, you have to do another. So, I thought that music was a trigger for me because I used to go to these concerts all the time. And then I had the chance to go see the same band when I was sober. And I was like, I wonder if this is going to be a trigger for me because I always used to get, drunk and high at these shows and all that. And I went, I'm perfectly fine. And that was because I've been working on my sobriety. I've developed all these things that help me stay sober. And I've gotten to the point where there are very few triggers in my life. There could possibly be a trigger sometime in the future. Something may happen that may drive me to drinking or something, but I really don't have any triggers anymore. I don't I don't go through my day and then something reminds me, oh my God, I feel like drinking. That just doesn't happen to me anymore. It could, and it has here and there, but I've developed a life, a sober life, and that sober mindset, and that's what's really helped me a lot. So, yeah, lots and lots of great comments.
Absolutely. I strongly believe, this from ICU, I strongly believe that if you want to change a habit, replace it with another one. That's a good thing. Yeah, you can replace it with a sport, reading, meditating, whatever you want.
Yes.
Deb says, can't change that past of ours and what issues it caused. Hard finding peace with that. Well, what I find really helps is understanding that when I was under the influence, I wasn't really me. Like, this is a difficult thing because it's like when you're under the influence, you do things that you wouldn't do if you were not under the influence. Like, you're a totally different person. Like, some people have family members. I know I have a family member, a friend of mine has a family member, where you just know if they started drinking again, right? Not even a lot. Like, they have one sip and you know their whole demeanor changes, and that's probably how I'd be too, but I don't want to test it, so I'm not going to do that. But that's not really you. I mean, sure, you did the things and you are responsible for them, but you did them under a different state of mind. It's kind of like if I was to take someone and put them in a concentration camp and starve them of food and water and make them watch a certain thing on TV for a month, at the end of the month, you're not going to recognize them. You will not recognize them. I guarantee you. Take me, put me in that, you're not going to recognize me. This is proven scientifically that the majority of people will be altered by altering and changing their surroundings. And so alcohol is the same thing. Now, it is self-administered, which kind of sucks, but, again, that's something that happens over time. So what we have to look at is, what are we responsible for? Obviously, pay the price for the things you did bad. If you stole from someone, make it good. If you did something bad, go to court, have your day in court or whatever it is. But for the most part, a lot of people did things that may have been emotional, damaging to people, or may have hurt people or whatever. One, have empathy for the fact that you were in a controlled environment that made these things easier to do, and you were under the influence, right? That's why they call it under the influence. You can't drive under the influence because you're under the influence. You were under the influence. And so we have to look at it and have a little bit of empathy for ourselves, but more empathy also for the other people in looking at, wow, they were part of that. That sucks. I can make amends to them. I can deal with that. But I'm not going to spend the rest of my life stewing over all the stuff I did. I'm going to spend the rest of my life being a living amends, because you can go and you can apologize and you can try to clear everything up, and apologies are not that good. The best apology is a living apology, an apology of, I'm going to be better. I'm going to do it. I remember when I was drinking, I would write letters to my family and I'd say, oh man, this is the day I'm going to stop. And then I'd write another letter 10 days from then. Oh, this is the day. And they were like, dude, get this horse shit out of here. As much as you feel emotional about it, this isn't really working. And then when I got sober, I was like, I don't need to write letters anymore. I need to be sober.
Yep.
Because being sober, that's the living amends. And focus on that. Focus on going forward and being sober instead of all the other stuff.
That is so true. And I just have to reiterate what he just said, because saying sorry for me that was not good enough. It was, and when I did say sorry to people, they said, "How about just staying sober?" And that's it. Staying sober is how I made amends for many of the problems. And some people, they did not forgive me. And I just did my part, and I try to just keep moving forward in the right direction. And sobriety is it. And that's the key right there. That's a huge key for serenity and just being happy. So yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Anyone got any last minute comments before we close out for the day? Let us know. I think we do have a call scheduled for Sunday, I believe. So check that out over at talksober.com. If you do want to support the channel, Terry has been working like a madman, making videos and PDFs and all kinds of good stuff for you. I got some more letters I got to add to it. You can do that at talksober.com. Click on support the channel, or just fill out the little form on the side, and you can support what we're doing here and get a bunch of tools to help you get and stay sober. And also, it's a monthly thing, so as we come out with new stuff, we're coming out with an app and some other cool tips to help you get sober as well. And make sure you subscribe and click the bell.
Right on.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for being here. Give this video a big thumbs up so we can reach more and more alcoholics and help them with the message of hope that has helped us or is helping us now. Thanks for being here, guys. Marcus and Terry from Talk Sober. Go over to talksober.com, support the channel, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.